Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Springfield at Martin Fine Art. Look at the wall behind me and you'll see that there's some glass, art glass on this wall, probably like you've never seen before. Ed Martin here in Springfield has been doing this for 35 years. He's self-taught. He never had an art class, built his own kiln where he cures this stuff in the basement of the studio. And we're going to show the process of building art glass and also the thought process, the creative process that goes into it as well. Ed Martin was good enough to close up the gallery just for a couple hours today so we could come in. And Ed, I hope we're not like a bull in a china shop here and start knocking stuff over. But thanks for letting us come in and showing us around.
Thank you for having me.
I mentioned that you've been doing this for 35 years and
Yes.
that you're self-taught. And in fact, you learned everything on your own, didn't you?
Yep, pretty much. It's just been a journey through glass, all different facets of it. I started out with stained glass and worked into beveled glass and beveled glass windows and did all my own beveling. And kind of ventured into dimensional etchings and blocks of glass and then fused glass and laminated glass and just keeps on going. You know?
We're going to learn a lot about fused glass today because that's something that you do that not a lot of people attempt to do. And what I want to do first is take a look at my right over here to this wall, which has, well, you know, I mentioned 35 years of your experiences. Some of this is older and some of it's newer, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the majority of this is my newer work that I'm working on now. Dimensional mirror series and fused glass and laminated glasses. When I fuse glass, I also slump it, they call it, where it's a second process where you bend it and give it form and shape and make it fluid. And it kind of gives it a little bit more dimension and free-form look of it. I also do a lot of the recycling of glass.
This is what we're looking at here. Now, this is fascinating because, number one, it looks like these objects are just sort of floating.
Yeah, and they actually really are because I accumulated so much glass over the past 12 years of fusing that I was getting boxes and boxes of glass. So I bought a commercial glass recycling machine and throw it in there and granulate it. Yeah. And so I have zero waste now. And by doing that, I can take the granulated glass and pour it in there and move it around and shuffle it around and blend it and phase it, and I can set up forms in it and put things inside of the pieces and then granulate it around. But by mixing clears and blacks and whites and some of the metallic surface glasses, I can get all kinds of different effects that really you can't get with any other method.
And we're going to see too that this is beautiful. But we're also going to see that some of your art is very useful as well.
Absolutely.
Sinks, countertops, things for the kitchen, it's backsplashes.
Yeah.
It's going to be neat. Let's walk this way. Now, you've been engaged in making some larger pieces lately, and you built your own kiln so that you could build big glass art.
Yeah, that's what really separates mine from most other people who do fuse glass, is the size of my work. I can do full 6-foot tall pieces, and by laminating I can actually elongate it to 8 and 9 feet, and so it really separates it a lot. In this particular piece, this was all recycled black glass here that was set, and then it had the clear red transparent in the center to accent it, but that was all recycled glass from black glass there.
I'll be darned. That's wonderful. Now, we talked about fused glass, and this platter, I guess we could call it a platter, couldn't we?
Yes.
Is a very good example. Now, when you describe fused glass to people, how do you describe how it's done?
Well, basically everything in here. This is one piece of glass. The white is one separate piece of glass. All of these pieces here are separate pieces of glass that are all basically cut cold and then set together and then put in a kiln and melted together. To get the white form in here is a powdered glass, where I actually sift powdered glass in and then manipulate it with my hands to just get different patterning in it. And then when you melt it, it becomes one part of the piece. And when you're done, you've got a platter where you can serve on that platter. You can throw it in the dishwasher. I mean, it's a very durable item, and that is totally individual pieces that are melted together.
So when you put this in the kiln, it's like a puzzle.
Absolutely.
And then when you take it out of the kiln, it's been fused. It's been melded together.
Yeah, it goes up to 1475 degrees, and so all the elements are liquid at that point. And so they're liquid, and they just form into one solid piece. And then when they're cooled down, they adhere back together. All the molecules adhere back together and just turn it into one solid piece of glass.
Will you show us this kiln later on?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
And which you designed and built, huh?
Yep.
Now, talk about big art. I love this. Now, this is fused, right? Is this fused glass? Okay.
Yeah, this one here, this piece was fused separate from this one, And these are called stringers. They're actually individual pieces of glass that are pulled into threads and then broken and arranged onto the top of the white glass. And then this is shards of glass called confetti glass, and it's all sprinkled on. And then this piece was separate from this one. And then I did a third firing where I gave this one the fluid motion and the form of it, and then laminated those together to get the height and everything.
The lines, the colored lines, are separate pieces of glass. Those
Every
are
one
not
of them.
painted. They're separate pieces of glass. Wow. Now, this can be sit outside.
Absolutely. The glass is more durable than the metal base that it's put in. It will never deteriorate down. It'll never break down. It'll take the freeze and thaw without any problem whatsoever.
So if you want some color in your yard, in the
Absolutely.
winter time when there's nothing going on out there, you can use your art glass outside.
Yeah, and I've done a lot of large 10-foot high sculptures with all primary colors where people have called me and said, you know, they love it in the middle of winter when it's so dreary, and they still have a nice big splash of color out there, which is nice.
I'll bet. Well, let's walk around and make this circle here, and let's hope there's room for the camera here. Here's another good example. This is you lay this flat in your kiln,
Right, and these are all individual pieces that were cut and just laid next to each other and then capped with a clear glass and then melted together. And then these are more recycled pieces. But this shows the variety of the recycling that you can do by taking the orange glasses and shaded them into grains, and then I highlighted it with a shaded border, but you get the translucency through it, which gives it a whole lot of dimension and depth and feel to it that's really, really unusual for glass.
It's nice too to have a brother who's got talent and doesn't mind helping your gallery out. Joe Martin.
Yeah, my brother Joe does all the paintings. They're oil paintings, and they're prints of his work.
Wonderful. Okay, now I do want to show vibrations up here, and this is this top piece, because this is a very unusual form. Is that also fused? Each one of those bands?
Right.
is
What I
fused?
did on that was actually started out to be a different look altogether. I cut all these individual pieces and then fused those together in individual pieces that had this inlaid into it, and I got it together, and I was starting in a different direction, and I didn't care for that direction, so I ended up piecing them all together in the pattern that they are now, and then sifting white glass into the little cracks between each one of them to sort of highlight them a little bit, and then fusing all those pieces back into one solid piece.
Wow.
And then laminating the dichroics on the top to give it a little bit of dimension and depth on it.
Man, well, there was a lot of hours in that piece.
Yeah, there was a lot of time in that. It was a work in progression. You know, I kept on going different directions on me.
Hey, you know, I mentioned earlier that, of course, it's beautiful to look at, but it's also functional. And if we
Absolutely.
go into your kitchen and bath in here, we can see
Absolutely.
some of the functional work that you do. And this is, we've got to bend over here. It's kind of low. But I want to start in the bath because I had never seen glass sinks before, but wow, there's a piece of work.
Yeah, I started doing the glass sinks about 6 or 8 years ago. And I did probably about 30, 35 of them. That's a full dichroic sink, which is this metallic surface glass. And what I did to get this effect was take a full sheet of this metallic glass, cut it into the squares individually, laid it back out in the exact pattern, and then sifted green glass, powdered green glass in between the cracks of it, and then capped it with clear.
Perfectly
and fused
smooth,
it.
though. I mean, it looks like tile, but it's perfectly smooth. Yeah. And the countertop.
Yeah, that's a granulated glass. That's the recycled all the green glasses that I put together and cast it with an iridized edge, and it actually lights up. You know, in the winter, if you get lights, it's got lights underneath them to kind of light it up and give you a little bit more different effect.
How long have you been recycling glass?
I bought the machine to actually feed it through about 4 or 5 years ago.
Saves you some money, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes it where I have zero waste, and that's what I was really wanting, because the glass is really expensive. The types of glass that I use are the most expensive glasses you can buy.
Well, I want you to show us that, and we want to see the raw glass that you start with, if we can. And this room, there's a piece in this room that I just have fallen in love with. And the reason is because it shows so well how your big kiln allows you to work on. That is a massive piece
Yeah,
there.
that's a
and if the
huge
audience could
piece.
see how thick that is, I think you described that you used 6 panes
Right.
of glass back to back.
It's actually 3/4 of an inch thick. There's 6 layers of glass that were melted over a ceramic fiber blanket. And that ceramic fiber blanket, I cut the design out of that and then put the glass on top of that blanket and melted it to give it all the dimension and the shape of it.
Gosh, it's
and then
lovely.
it's painted with automotive paints on the back of that one, and then the
Automotive
center
paints.
is fused.
That's what gives it that shine. I mean,
Yeah,
it's that.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's neat. That is so neat. Now, the kitchen. You've got some tricks up your sleeve for people who want kitchen work done. Now, I think you're working on a backsplash downstairs,
Right.
aren't you? This is a kind of an example of what a backsplash would look like in
I
glass.
can do individual tiles, and the thing about it is with my big kiln, and it's the hardest thing for people to get used to, the fact that instead of doing like an individual tile, a 2x2 tile or 4x2, I can do a 5-foot long tile that's 2 feet wide. You know, I can do a backsplash in one solid piece of glass instead of all the individual pieces of glass. And like the back door window shows that, you know, the different size and the things you can do with the types of glass. And, you know, I can use them on tiles, borders, windows. I can use them in the cabinet glass and also.
You used to be a woodworker.
Yes,
and I bring this up because this was one of we talked about your phases.
Right.
You used to put your glass in wood.
Yeah, I
and
did a whole
lovely.
series of that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I really did a lot of woodworking. I built every piece of my own furniture, and I built all my own cabinets and everything. And then I got, you know, out of it and just started into the fusing, and then it really the fusing sort of overtook everything. And when I started into it, it was just fascinating to me, the different aspects you could do. I've touched on blown glass, but I just think the variety of what you can do with the fused is just so many different directions and so much more things, you know.
Let's look at your cabinets. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is because we were talking about fused glass. I believe these handles are fused, aren't
Yes.
they? You can see these are separate pieces of glass. And these just, I guess, glue right on to whatever.
Yeah, they're adhered onto it. I make the back handles, and this was originally metal down here, and then I wanted to change them to the glass to show people that you can just, and you can take a simple cabinet door and just adhere a piece of glass onto it and change the knob and dramatically change the look of your kitchen without doing any remodeling whatsoever. It's just adding basically accents onto it.
And you love these knobs. I mean, you're into knobs. You got knobs of every color, and of course these come this way. You didn't have to make these, I guess, huh?
Well, yeah, actually, I bought a dichroic glass, a metallic glass surface, capped it with clear, and melted it together to make the circles. And
Okay,
then,
so you did have to.
so I did make it.
You're not one to, you know, if you can make it, you're not one to buy it, right? Okay, and this is kind of cool too, because we were talking about how you incorporate your woodwork into your.
Yeah, this was I went through a phase where I did a whole series of dimensional etchings and blocks of glass, where this is actually masked off from the reverse side and then sandblasted the design out of the block of glass, and then it's edge lit to give it the effects of it. And I did a whole series of those for several years.
Well, listen, could we make our next stop your studio, where you actually build this stuff and you can show us how you start with the glass and where you go from there?
Yep.
Okay, good. Let's do it.
Good.
Well, we mentioned, Ed, that you never throw anything away. This is your friendly glass grinder, I guess, huh?
Yeah, this is actually a commercial glass grinding machine that'll do like 600 bottles an hour, or a lot of scrap glass.
And this is what we end up with, huh?
Yeah, after we grind it, comes out.
My goodness, you can actually handle this stuff. I would think that you'd end up with shards of just.
No, it's
tear your
pretty
hand
smooth. Yeah, you can handle it real well. It pretty much
darn.
beats it to death. There's
Wow.
three-quarter inch thick steel
Yeah.
plates that beat it up. And
So that's white glass.
Uh-huh.
And then you've got other colors that you work with too that
I
you
can mix
grind
any
up.
colors at all. I can mix custom colors. I did some custom tops for somebody up in Chicago that wanted browns and whites, and so I do different blues and different greens
Yeah.
and things like that.
They're beautiful once they get ground up, aren't they?
Yeah, they're nice. They're really pretty when you get them all when you get them fused together. Here,
man.
this is what they come out to after they're actually fused together. This has got all the different color greens, a little bit of yellow, and then it's got oranges around the edges. And you can shade with it. You can do all kinds of different patterns.
Let's make a sink out of this.
All right. Yeah, if this was going to be a sink, I would take this blank that's the right size actually for a sink. And what I would do is I would put it in this kiln and I would suspend it over this stainless steel ring with a covering on the ring, and I would suspend it over that like that. Then I would heat it up very slowly up until 1250 degrees, and at 1250 degrees it would just naturally just start dropping in the middle of that ring and just giving your concave part for your sink. And then when it gets to 1250 degrees, you have to stop it immediately so it doesn't just puddle all over your kiln, you know.
Right.
And you flash cool it, get it to stop moving.
When you say flash cool it, how do you do that?
You open up the kiln when it gets the right temperature, and you look at it through here to see where it's at, to see how far it's dropped down in your ring.
Oh, okay.
And then when you see how far it's dropped down, you just close that, open the lid, and let it cool about 100 degrees to stop the glass from moving.
Okay.
And then shut it, and then slowly, with the computer, get it to kneel down to the proper annealing point to make it so it lasts.
Well, you mentioned that sort of gold outline that you've got here.
Yeah, see that gold glass here, that's the glass I use to do the outer edge and the shading and the inside here. I mix that with the greens to get the different effects.
And of course this again is that ground up glass that you save, never throw anything away. Now, I mentioned you can build big glass artwork that a lot of people can't because you've got a big kiln.
Right.
You built this monster yourself about 9 years ago, designed it and built it, and of course you're not an electrician or a trained machine man, but you did it, huh?
Yeah, I welded the frame together, and then I brought it down in halves and bolted it all together down here, and then leveled it all out. And then I built all the sides up and the elements, and I had the elements custom turned for the dimensions of the kiln by a company. And it allows me to do big panels in it like this here. This will this is going to be a light fixture. This is going to be a 5-foot long light fixture that I'll take in another firing, and I will shape this into an L shape that will go up and straight back. And then this will be suspended with lights behind it, and this will be a light fixture that's 5 feet wide that goes in the kitchen that matches the kitchen cabinets in the ladies' kitchen.
So again, in order to bend that back, you'll lay that down on a support, and when it gets to 1200 or whatever degrees, that'll just sort of bend down for you.
Yeah, it'll just slowly bend down. Like this sconce here will be a U-shaped sconce, where I build the forms myself for underneath them. Then you suspend the glass over the top of it just like that. So when it heats, when it gets the right temperature, gravity will form it into what you want.
But the trick is knowing when that happens so you can get the heat off that.
Right.
Because you probably wasted a few, didn't you? Where they puddled up on you. And
hence the glass recycler.
Do you still have mistakes?
Oh yeah, and you'll have things pop up like right now with the kiln. You know, one of the quartz tubes had touched a piece of glass and blew up the piece of glass and blew up the quartz tubes, and now I've got to replace that. And I mean, it's always a learning experience because everything's different. Every thickness of glass, every size of glass is different.
Well, and you mentioned too, you don't mass produce anything. Everything you do is one of a kind.
Absolutely.
So you don't get to practice a whole lot because that's the last time you're going to make this thing.
Yep. That's the whole thing. It's all trial and error, and and there are mistakes because of the way I do it. I try and take it to the edge all the time. You know, I'm always trying to go bigger and thicker and things like that to do things that nobody else is doing.
Ed, we just mentioned that you everything you make is one of a kind, and you very rarely plan or draw out a project. But you're working on a backsplash for somebody now,
right? And
you chose to do that because you're going to put layers side by side, and you're going to put a circular design on the backsplash. In fact, we saw in your kitchen what you can do with a wall space, which is pretty cool. How will you start on something like this?
On this is going to be a striped background, basically. So I will take two different color glasses. I'll take these two beige glasses, and I will cut those and alternate them and make those into stripes for the background of that whole backsplash that's actually going to be 5 feet wide. And then I will take a gold iridized glass, which is this.
Did you say iridized?
Right, it's an iridized surface on the glass. And I will cut the circle out of this, and I will cover it with contact paper and then acid etch the iridized surface off of here. And so you'll have a black design with a gold iridized border around it.
Now, iridized glass is expensive?
Yeah, it adds to the price of glass like everything. It's a chemical coating that they put on when it's hot. They spray it when it's hot coming out of the leer, and then they roll it, and it gives it that sort of metallic kind of look to it.
Is glass your most expensive? Is that your greatest expense?
Absolutely. Some of the glasses run, anywhere from, $30 a sheet to $150 a sheet for the small metallic glasses.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me in fact handle one here. We got one out, and I want to show a couple of samples here. These are some of the metallic glasses you're talking
those are
about.
the dichroic surface glasses, which these, a full sheet of this metallic is one circle this big, and it's about $160 wholesale.
Oh my goodness. Well, you don't want to mess that project up, do you?
No, that's why I use every crumb of it.
You do, yeah, every bit. Now, here's another example, and I like this one because it actually shows that how you incorporated that into a piece of art.
This is a pattern dichroic, and I cut it where it left the pattern line in the middle of it to make the design in the middle of that, and fired this into the glass. And when you fire this into the glass and leave it without a cap on it, without a clear color cap on it, it'll give a real metallic look like this and give you a whole different metallic.
And again, this is a fused piece.
Right.
This is a separate piece of glass. The black stripes are separate pieces of glass.
Right, everything in it is a separate piece.
And then you had to shape this by setting it in the kiln on supports, and then catching it as it sort of drooped. You would catch it just in time. Do you know what that's going to be used for?
That's just going to be a freestanding piece. I'll make a wood base and use that for a freestanding piece, and then I'll fuse another V to come up here. And actually, that's a remnant off a large piece that I have in the other room that broke, and so I have to refuse a piece for it, and then so I'll use this for something new because I use everything.
I love that color of blue.
Yeah, it's a real nice sharp blue.
Would you move around there for me
Absolutely.
real quickly, and we'll take a look at some of these other projects that you're working on. This black glass seems very deep. It's almost like you can look into it. It's like translucent in a way.
Yeah, the reasoning is because I use a black glass and then I cap it with a clear and then melt the clear over the black, and it gives it depth and real dimension and really clarifies it and everything. And I use these for the backdrops of my Mirror Dimension series, which is the one where I take different colored mirrors. Like in the black ones, I'll use all the silver mirrors and I'll place them onto the background like I did this one. And like these, I'll place these wherever I'm wanting them to create the piece, and I'll slide them around until I get them where I want, and then I'll start a second layer where I take acrylic blocks that I actually fabricate with the stainless steel rods, and I'll put a second layer on there and start doing a second layer onto there. And then I'll use iridized marbles for accents and different things like that for accents of it, and then I'll laminate all this together, and they'll be the new series that I'm doing. I do quite a few of those pieces.
What will you call that series?
It's the Mirror Dimension series because of the different layering and everything of it.
Now you mentioned that you fabricate your own rods and your own. What is this now?
I buy 4x8 sheets of acrylic. 3/4 inch thick acrylic, and then I cut it in the wood shop and drill it and everything for my stainless steel rods, and I take the stainless steel rods and cut those and grind the ends of them.
Okay, all right. So these actually are the supports, I guess, for.
Well, they're just accents for the piece to give a floating kind of grid underneath a lot of them, to give it another dimension and bring another design element into it, because there's so much metal. And I use copper, I use brass, I use stainless steel. Depending on the look I want, I can go a million different directions with it. I've made them all gold tones, all brown tones, all blue tones. I mean, there's a million different directions. It's really endless, and they're all done just freeform and randomly. I'll start by cutting just a bunch of pieces of glass and belt sanding them and grinding them and getting them all smooth and polished out and everything on the edges, and then build them from there.
Well, Ed, we got a chance to look at some of the finished products of your most recent series, Mirrored Dimensions. Is that right? And what we saw downstairs was you were in the process of putting one together, or conceiving one. This one's pretty recent, then, isn't it?
Yeah, that's more of a mechanical look to one that I just finished.
And we saw downstairs, we saw that you were using stainless steel rods, but here you've got different color, different
I use
thing going
brass and coppers, and I use a lot of the water glasses, and that's what gives you a lot of movement and motion in them. When you get a lot of the natural light of a room, it really changes the look of the piece, and I mean, it'll look different colors depending on different angles, and they're really that's what people don't realize when they first get my pieces, how much they change when you get them in your environment. They really change a lot.
And you want this to look metallic. It's all glass. There's no brass or copper on here. But
exactly, it's all glass.
And marbles.
Yeah, I use iridized marbles because it gives it such a dimension, and it gives it a whole different feel, a whole different dimension. It gives it almost helps with the watery kind of feel to it.
And what do you call this glass?
That's just a white fused glass. That's a fused glass that I did in the kiln, the white capped with the clear and melted together. And then the other pieces are put on top of it.
Yeah. And I asked you earlier, and I still get it, how do you cut a circle?
The smaller ones are cut by hand. The bigger ones are cut by circle cutters, where they suction to glass and then you spin them around and then break it off, and then you belt sand the edges to get them round and everything.
Kind of like an old compass like you used to use in grade school, only it's got a blade on it.
Except for it's got a glass cutter on it. And you oil it and you just run it around and it'll cut it. And then you have to belt sand it to get it perfect.
Well, it is perfect. It is perfect. We really appreciate you you showing us this today. It's been a wonderful experience to learn about glass art.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming over.
Thank you, Ed. Well, you know, Ed says that about 12 years ago, when he first doing fused glass, he said people weren't in Central Illinois were not particularly interested in it, but they are now. In fact, he's got a double-digit number of commissions that he's working on as we speak. So he's not in the studio all the time, but the studio is open from Wednesday through Saturday if you want to come in here and take a look. With another Illinois Story in Springfield, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
For a DVD copy of this episode of Illinois Stories, send $19.95 to Network Knowledge, P.O. Box 6248, Springfield, Illinois 62708. Be sure to include the program name, broadcast date, and topic. You may also order with your credit card by calling 800-232-3605 or by using our secure server by going online to networkknowledge.tv.